Welcome back to another episode of the Loco Fit Show, where we redefine what healthy means to you. I'm your host, Lauren Conlon, and this week I am joined by, drum roll, that was a terrible drum roll, why was it just finger tapping? Jill is back.
Hi.
She was taking a nap, guys.
I was really sleepy for a while there.
For a few years. She was hibernating.
Yeah, I was in Narnia, actually.
Yeah.
Like,
honestly, if you told me that, I'd be like, well,
it makes sense.
Not surprised. But Jill is back. She is back on the podcast. She's back on the team. Yay. Super excited. And we wanted to do a whole series actually on like Lauren and Jill react, right? Like,
yeah.
Because
we had a whole series. Kind of, not really an official series, but like it was just TikTok diets or Instagram diets.
So we're going to make this an actual staple like in the podcast rotation. So you guys know that, we have the podcast with Rick on mental health, and then we'll do some of the coaching podcasts. I'll do interviews, but we wanted to make this one distinct because there are so many things on the internet that are quite crazy. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. And
so I was like, all right, Jill, you fall down rabbit holes all the time.
It's like it's my thing.
It's definitely like your thing.
I have a PhD in rabbit holes at this point. That's right.
Yeah, pretty much. And
they're like, actually, no.
But I figured, hey, let's make use of the rabbit holes, right? Like, let's put some constructive energy into this. We can get something out of it.
So when I'm scrolling TikTok, I can be like, I'm just working.
I'm working. This is for research purposes.
Just for like research.
Why did I buy 3 new skincare products? I got this thing and I saw that.
Well, thanks to my research, I'm getting ads for all sorts of things now.
Oh my gosh.
Well, one thing that's like repetitive. But
yeah, we will get to that. Probably the next one. But
probably.
For this one, this was a heavy hitter. Mm-hmm. And this is just a topic that I have discussed on other podcasts. We've kind of woven this into, other podcasts we've done here. And it's all about the idea and the concept that intentional weight loss doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And that it is not only doesn't work, but that it's extremely harmful. And the problem with this is not only one that it's incorrect, but it's the way that people are sharing this information that is really scary. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, definitely a harmful, I think it's a harmful way of putting that information out there because, coming from like, if you're someone who is wanting that and you're looking for resources or even just trying to follow people who can give you good information, like you see that and it's like, oh, well, why bother, or, just like the amount of people who are kind of in this camp or like group of thinking, right? Like it's just, you already have so much information online and you're bombarded with so many quote unquote experts, and this just doesn't make that any easier,
Imagine if you had seen this however many years ago, you know, when you started your journey. Like, what if you had been consistently just seeing this message? And now with the way that, of course, we know how the algorithms work, when you see one thing and you scroll on it or you look at the comments, then the algorithm is like, oh, you only want to see this.
You want more of this.
You want more of this.
No,
I actually
don't.
am just, this is research. But the problem is if you had been in that spot, and then you were already kind of in that vulnerable place where you're like, I want to make a change, but I don't know. And then you saw all these people talking in this way, then you might have been like, all right, well, I guess this is the answer. And that, of course, is a whole larger issue with social media and algorithms and all of that, which is a whole different discussion. But let's get into the crux of, all right, intentional weight loss doesn't work. This is the claim that is being shared. And again, it's not, I understand to a degree, and we're going to break some of that down, where people are coming from with this, right? This isn't completely unwarranted to say that fat loss and weight loss efforts are not harder for certain people. This is not to say that it presents its own unique challenges. You guys know I talk about this all the time, right? I've been fighting against this stuff forever, right? Like clearly this is our whole message on our team, is to not yo-yo diet, not perpetuate, diet culture, et cetera, but still within a healthy context. And let's just read this one post because I think that this encapsulates it perfectly, why we're considering this a detrimental message.
Yeah, it's a doozy, guys. And,
buckle up. If you're drinking a coffee like I am, nothing's changed. Always, we had to get coffee before this, of course.
Because we left the house,
Because we left But we didn't buy anything else at Target.
We didn't. I think that
That was just because the batteries were
right by the checkout, to be fair.
That was the only reason.
Yeah, so Target, put your batteries further into the store, you'll probably get more sales. Come to me for shopping advice, I guess. Anyway, so this one's a doozy. And I think we can preface this by saying, like, this is just one person making this statement or saying it in this way. But this is a doozy of a post. And I don't even know if we want to get into the hashtags they put at the bottom of the post, because that's a whole other thing. But I will go into what this person said. So, and I quote, "Sometimes I go into the fat acceptance tag and see shit about, yeah, do weight loss, but healthy. And I wish more people realize that there is no healthy way to lose weight." And this is written in all caps. They go on to say, not only is it physically bad for you, as there's no true way to lose weight aside from over-exercising and under-eating, but dieting is pretty much the number one way to develop an eating disorder, and it's just bad for you. Not to mention that it's not permanent, and it's, even if it's unintentional, 95 to 97% of people who lose weight gain it back, and 70% of those gain more than they weighed before. I don't care if your doctor said it's for health, quote unquote, because no, the fuck it isn't. Healthy eating is a myth. Dieting is dangerous. Compulsive exercise kills. Live your life and yada, yada, yada. And for fuck's sake. I don't know if that last part was needed, but yeah, that is the post. And your face says it all.
A lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
So when I told Jill about this, I was like, yeah, she's like, do you want me to share with you beforehand, or we're just going to talk about it
just like throw it all at you?
I was like, yes, please bombard me with these messages. And honestly, this is a perfect first message for our series.
Coming back with a bang.
Yes. Hey, that's what we're doing. Whee. And so the person who's sharing this, right, is in a place where they have probably tried a lot of different diets. They might be
fed up. Maybe.
Yeah. Like, this is not their first go around with this, right? Like, nobody comes to this conclusion without several failed attempts of something. And so I understand, right? I'm not sitting here trying to pretend like there's not a lot of bad information out there. There's not a lot of bad diets out there. And I understand that people are frustrated and they're fed up and they're going, well, what can I do? And you pointed out perfectly. They feel just like hopeless, right? But that is where we have to say, it's not the diet's fault. It's how we're implementing it, right? And there are so many approaches that this can be healthy. Exercising is healthy.
Yeah. It's just
through and through. It is literally the best thing that you could do to improve not only your lifespan, but your health span.
Yeah.
Right? Like
your
unequivocally.
Functionality, like your just overall quality of life. There's no harm in having that.
Of course. Are there people who compulsively over-exercise? Yes.
There are extremes to everything, though, you know.
And this is an extreme on the other end, right?
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is now if somebody were to read that message, if they were in a place where they're like, I've tried everything, and you know what? Okay, yeah, there's other people who are saying this, and now it makes them not want to try at all.
Yeah, I can see this from a perspective of having been overweight. And for those who aren't familiar with my history, I at one point was like about 180 pounds, and I'm like 5'2", and I lost about 75, 80 pounds when I was in high school. So kind of thinking of like me at that point where I was kind of like over it at that point when it clicked for me. I could have easily, you know, maybe if this was around at that time, someone who's frustrated, someone who's like kind of fed up, they've tried a lot of stuff, maybe they're confused about what to do, where to start. You can easily see these kinds of posts, and you know, and this may be like one way to go about it, but I can easily see maybe myself being like, oh, this is a good justifiable reason for me not to keep trying, or for me to not even pursue it. And yeah, you know, you could say like, oh, that you're just making excuses, but that a lot of people can justify it with this kind of way of thinking, which I think longer term is just harmful, because you can see these habits and these kinds of thought processes go until you're like in your 30s or almost 40s. And at that point, it's really late to get a hold of it if you let that stuff go out of control. And obviously I'm talking about another extreme on the spectrum, but I find that if you're someone who is already frustrated, like this is going to be something that you feel like, oh, there's a whole group of people where I can kind of join this community and we can all be yes men, and you're not actually going anywhere that's going to be productive and positive when it comes to whatever health endeavors you're going towards.
Mm-hmm. No, it's really there's like this is like a multifaceted message, right? So let's like deconstruct it. So the first part was talking about how 95 to 97% of diets fail, right? And we've heard the statistic so many times that diets don't work. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, this is something that I have shared these messages, and we actually pulled up, there's a great paper from several years ago that it was actually one of the papers that I used with writing out the ideas for my research, right? And let's read some of those statistics because I think they're also very powerful. And so that's where like this whole message isn't incorrect necessarily, but it's taken out of context. Yeah. So let's read some of those statistics.
So over 60% of adults and close to 20% of children are overweight or obese.
I think that's definitely higher now.
Definitely, I want to say higher now. I want to say, actually, like
I think 70%.
I want to say 70%
overweight and obese.
Because this study was in 2011, mm-hmm. So quite a bit ago. And some of the other statistics are less than 20% of individuals who have attempted weight loss are able to achieve and maintain a 10% reduction over a year. Over 1/3 of the lost weight tends to return within the first year, and the majority is gained back within 3 to 5 years. A number of reasons have been proposed for why that regain happens, though. And, of course, like when it comes to interpreting research, people are just going to say 95% of diets fail, but you're not actually really looking at these studies and thinking about, okay, but like what were they actually looking at? What were the circumstances? What kind of diet were these people on? But that just gives you some perspective on, what we're actually looking at.
Yeah, there's a reason when we talk about weight regain, which is something that we both talk about a lot, we talk with our clients about a lot, and that's literally what we want to stop, right? Like our goal is to stop yo-yo dieting efforts with people. And if that's like what part of my life mission can be accomplished, like that's truly what I feel like I'm here to help do, because it is so prevalent, right? But it doesn't mean that trying doesn't mean that we shouldn't try anymore. It doesn't mean that we should just give up these efforts. It means that we need to change the methods. And the methods that most people use to lose weight when they're talking about these kinds of studies, they are using research to show, okay, they went on either low calorie or very low calorie diets. In research, you can do what's known as a very low calorie diet, which is less than 800 calories. It has to be supervised by medical professionals. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's people who do this, in the free living situation, but in terms of research, they are typically put on mostly liquid, under 800 calorie diets. They are given no nutrition counsel. Mm-mm. If you are put on a liquid diet for a fat loss study or a weight loss study, because they're not really just looking at fat loss, they're looking at weight loss, what are you expecting the results to be afterwards? Yeah. Why would that set anybody up for success? And I can't tell you how many people go to these like clinics, right? And this is still happening where people get whatever fucking, not Ozempic, but the other shot.
Yeah. What is it? Wegovy?
No, it's not. It was pre all this.
Oh, okay.
HCG, the HCG shots, and they'd go on 600 calorie diet for some numbnuts down the street. And it's like, where, of course, you are literally setting your body up to fail. And we can go through all the different metabolic adaptations and all the hormonal changes, and dieting and consistent dieting is setting your body up to have these metabolic adaptations, especially when you're losing fat-free mass in the process, which is really driving a lot of the fat regain. But nobody wants to talk about that. And then we have people who are really frustrated who are saying, oh, I don't even want to try. Yeah. Let's not train. It's going to give me an eating disorder. Well, that's actually the most protective thing that you could do against all of this.
And and even just to go back to the start of that post too, saying there's no healthy way to lose weight and that it's physically bad for you. There's no true way to do it other than over exercising. It's like when you're talking weight loss, and you're talking about that 95% of diets fail study, you're putting this idea in just one bucket when we know that unsustainable ways to lose weight are not sustainable after you lose the weight. We know that when we use extreme measures, we get back to our real life and we're like, oh, well, I can't actually do that day to day. It's not realistic for me to exercise 3 hours a day or, eat 700 calories, 800 calories every single day. That stuff, it's not going to be something that is going to be sustainable long term so that you can actually work at maintaining your loss. So no wonder we're yo-yoing and slingshotting back to that starting weight, maybe plus some because you were so restricted before and you're kind of, hey, like I finally have these foods again, right? So putting dieting in just that one bucket, it's also, just a huge misconception because they're eliminating the idea of think about all the other people who have lost weight, including myself, who have maintained that weight loss. Are you saying that we're just unicorns? No, I'm not a unicorn. I wish. But
that's why you were in Narnia. You were trying to find, you were like, how can I become a unicorn?
I was galloping in the prairie. Whatever unicorns do. Anyway.
They gallop.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Oh, that just reminded me of, I'm going to get sidetracked. I'm sorry. It reminded me of this
PhD in rabbit holes.
This TikTok I saw when someone was using AI to put together like a picture of a centaur and AI didn't know what a centaur was. So it just got continually worse because it started out as just like a horse or like a unicorn, and then they put like a human face on the horse's head.
I bet that was scary as shit.
So good. I'm going to show it to you after this. Anyway, going back out of Narnia now.
Out of Narnia.
When we put that kind of idea in one bucket and just give it one definition, there are so many people who are going to say, oh, dieting is just correlated to restriction, just correlated to, I'm just going to be suffering all the time. I'm going to be damaging my body. And that's just not the case. We know this.
Mm-hmm. No, and it just truly eliminates all nuance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nuance.
And that's what all of this is, right? Humans, we're very similar in most ways, but then there are differences based on our lives and what we have going on and our different genetics and epigenetics and all of that, and our own dieting history. Like that's where the nuance needs to happen. And so saying blanketed statements in the other way too, like, oh, exercise is all that you need, or dieting is all that you need. Like, we can talk about the calories in versus calories out argument. Mm-hmm. There is more to it than that. Like there is so much more to it than that. Yeah. So saying things like that too, not really helpful. We have to get back to conversations that are nuanced in nature, and being overweight and being obese and battling that is a very nuanced conversation. But just having these kinds of discussions, and this is not the only post about this, right? This is prolific. This is everywhere. This is, in my opinion, where the intuitive eating and health at every size movement has gotten hijacked, because I think that there are really good intentions behind a lot of that. But I think that there are some individuals that have changed this narrative, and it's actually hurting the people who it needs to help, right? Like that's what the problem is with it. Like I think both of those things, if you truly read through, the intuitive eating principles and health at every size principles, like most of them are really solid. Yeah. Again, some of the language for some of the points, I'm kind of like, a little iffy. Personally, that's my opinion. Yeah. But I think overall, I think the intentions are really good and really pure. But the implementation, which is everything with human and individuals, especially because of how we communicate on social media, everything has to be distilled down into these fucking arguments over everything. Yeah. And like, let's be clickbaity and let's get our point across and dig our fucking heels in. Like, why are we digging our heels in over something like exercise? Like, yeah. And if we really think about how our bodies have like adapted, it's like, it's always so funny to me when I think we've gotten so far away from just understanding like how much our bodies like used to move, like how much we're actually designed to move, right? Where people will be like, oh my gosh, I have to add another session of cardio. Like, is this going to be bad for my body? It's like, bro, do you know like what our bodies are capable of doing? Like you sit on your ass all day. Like you're okay if you do an hour of cardio. Like you're going to make it, like you're going to make it.
You will survive.
You're going to survive.
The verdict is in.
Like, and I think that sometimes I want to make sure that we're understanding and like protecting our bodies, but we also have to be like, hey, like our bodies are really resilient. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's
absolutely.
And we don't do really a lot. Like, we don't have to do a lot now. Most people don't have to do a lot physically now. So we have to insert those types of things into our lives. If we all lived super active lives, we wouldn't need to do as much of this. But the majority of people are living extremely sedentary lives.
Yeah. And there's a whole other rabbit hole, I guess, we can go down as far as like, you know, the food environment and, you know, fast food and the rise of all that. And, you know, how even just like the psychology of food plays into that stuff too. And it's also important to note, like, obesity, as we know, is like a multifactorial thing. It's not just about, you know, someone's diet or their views on, you know, their, you know, whatever intentional dieting is to them. So that's also just, you know, we already know this, but I wanted to kind of preface that too. So when we're talking about we can even transition into some of these other posts too. When we see that they kind of correlate any sort of weight loss to, like you're just conforming to diet culture, or you're just conforming to what everyone else deems as healthy or good. And we're not arguing that you can't be, you know, healthy and functional if you are a heavier weight, but at a certain point, it's important to know, like, hey, like, am I able to move well? Do I feel good where I'm at? Do I have a lot of like food focus? Do I feel like I can participate in activities and feel like energized, right? We know, like, usually for most people who have lost weight, they say, wow, I can't believe I was holding X amount of weight prior. And there's another post that we can talk about too, where, you know, a lot of those changes are attributed to like lifestyle changes, right? I'm eating more veggies. I'm moving my body more. I'm, you know, just more structured with my sleep habits. But also some of those changes can be tied to weight loss, and that's not a bad thing. It's not saying that weight loss is the only way to be healthy, of course. But you can't necessarily separate the two and just say one is going to get you those results versus the other. They're very intertwined.
And I think that was a great segue to this next point, is I think a lot of these discussions start out with the like physiological side, but then they morph more into the like cultural, social kind of side, right? Like, oh, are you just trying to fit into beauty standards? Like, you should just love yourself. And that's very true. Yeah. You can literally be at any body composition. We've seen this with ourselves. We've seen this with clients who have what many people would deem a perfect body, who are still struggling with their own self-image, with their own self-confidence. So just what you look like is not a determining factor of how much that you love yourself and your confidence and all of that. Absolutely not. But we can't discount that if somebody has been overweight or obese and now they're able to fit into clothes that they really like, they feel better about themselves. They're able to move better. We also can't
feeling
discount,
like more confident even in like social settings or just in relationships, right?
Yeah, that you can't discount that both of those things can be true at the same time. All of these things can be true, and that's where the lack of nuance is a problem, right? Yeah. Because just losing weight does not make you happy. Absolutely not. Nope. Not true.
Yeah, I've been there too.
Yeah. We've all, like, literally think about how many times we've gotten super lean, right? Like for a competition or whatever. And most people, you know, would say, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. And this, and we're picking apart every flaw, or, oh my gosh, I'm bloated like today. And I can't even, you know, the stuff we used to post, like, I can't believe I look like this right now. And it's, and when you're in it, it feels like the most dramatic thing, right? Yeah. So there are certainly time periods where you can, again, be changing your body into a standard that is quote unquote desirable, or that you deem desirable, because what everybody deems desirable is different, but what you deem to be desirable, and then you get there and you still feel like shit. You still don't feel confident. So yes, that is possible. But it's undeniable from the accounts of so many people, clients, friends, us individually, that there is no denying that many, many people feel better when they, you know, do change their body composition, right? Yeah. And there's nothing, I think that's what I guess that's where my issue with this is that it is now being almost perpetuated that it's a problem if you want to look different, that like you're a problem and you're just conforming. It's like, no, what if I want to look like that? Like, what if I now wanted to change my body and said, I want to gain 50 pounds. I want to be mad thick. I want to be super jacked. that might not be desirable to anybody else, but if that's what I wanted to look like, then I should be happy with that. Just like if I wanted to lose 30 pounds and be mad skinny. Okay. Right. Like I could do either of those things.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up because I had another post on that stuff too about posting before and afters and, you know, how a lot of people with this mindset would, you know, disagree about that. And they would say like, hey, I don't want to see your before and afters, or your before and afters are harming me and X, Y, and Z communities, when it doesn't have to be about anyone else but myself. You know, anyone can do what they want with their bodies, and weight loss is one of those things.
Exactly. Like, and everybody has their own opinions on what they want to look like. And I guess, like I said, my problem is when people are being discouraged, like someone else is discouraging you to look a certain way. Like who are you to say how someone else should look? And I get where they're coming from. Again, I get the, you know, the stigmas and the fat phobias. Like I understand that it's in response to that. Like completely understand it. But I think, again, there should just be a little bit of nuance here to say like, hey, like not everybody who wants to change their body composition is only doing it because of XYZ standards. Yeah. Like they could be wanting to do it for themselves. And only that individual can deem that, because guess what? They could get down to a certain weight and then realize, you know what? Like that's not necessarily what I even wanted to look like. Or maybe I do want to be actually, you know, bigger or thicker than I thought. Because there are so many times where we work with so many women who, and men too, but mainly women who have this like set number in their head, right? Yeah. I find this, again, it does happen with men, but traditionally more with women, and we coach more women just in general. But, you know, oh, I want to be this number. I want to be this number. I want to be this number. And weight is a proxy for how you do look. I mean, again, there's no denying that. But sometimes we have worked with people who, you know, they get down to a certain place and they're like, actually, like, this isn't what I want to look like. Like, I want to, like, wow, I actually realize I want to add more muscle, or I want to do this. And just the same way as like both of us know, if I were to weigh like plus or minus a certain amount from here, if I was like 10 or 15 pounds heavier, which I have been before, I'm just not comfortable. Yeah. I don't feel good. Like, everything hurts when I'm training. I feel slow. Not like I'm fast now, but let's be honest, but I'm even slower. Yeah. I'm like the slowest person alive. Lauren. So I am like a tortoise. But like, you know, I just don't feel good. I feel more winded, like literally doing everything.
I feel the same way, you know, when I'm maybe like about 10. I've been probably been like 13, 15 heavier. Well, obviously I've been way heavier, but in the recent years, I've been heavier. Yeah.
But just like if I'm too lean, I don't feel good either, right? Like there's a certain point where it's like, all right, if I'm under this weight, well, I don't feel great either. So that's sometimes, you know, when we do have a good handle on our weight, because we've, you know, done this for so many years, we can say like, hey, I like to be around here. And so many clients say that too. But clients who maybe haven't been to a weight before, you know, they get down there and they're like, wow, this isn't even really what I want to look like.
This isn't all it's cracked up to be.
And what's crazy too about all of this discussion with the, you know, intentional weight loss doesn't work. And this is where we are completely ignoring the muscle mass side of things. Yeah. And if you guys follow Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, she talks about this all the time. You guys should follow her. If you don't follow her, she's fantastic. And she just brings up a really great point, because we're always talking about adiposity, but we're rarely talking about muscle mass. Yeah. And like I talked about in the beginning, muscle mass or lack or loss of muscle mass is really one of the drivers that we see with metabolic adaptations over time. And that's really where a lot of these detrimental things are happening with hunger and hormonal dysregulations, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also just important to note that like obesity is not just about excess adiposity. It's also about a lack of muscle as well. And that's where a lot of the functionality issues come from, right? It's not just the weight. So that's where when we're talking about, you know, exercising is harmful and you can only do it in this, you know, excessive way. It's like, no. Like exercising is one of the best things that you can do. And even if that means that your weight doesn't change, that's okay. Like you are actually putting your body in a better position. Exercising because you hate yourself and you're trying to lose weight, not what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're talking about exercise that just benefits how you move, improves your functionality,
improves your mood.
Yeah.
Your sleep.
Especially,
Oh my gosh, so many people who don't train regularly, who start training regularly, like, I sleep so
like
much better.
Baby now. Yeah. And even like with, you know, those with back pain or joint pain, like, you know, if you're able to build up your resiliency with training and adapt to maybe some of those challenges that training can place on your body, you're going to feel better and you're going to alleviate maybe some of those pains that you had prior. But yeah, resistance training, especially, like I don't think anyone is going to detriment or be at a detriment by adding that in.
No, absolutely not. And that is where I think we have to shift the conversation to be like, all right, I totally am on board with like, we don't just need to lose weight to look a certain way or to fit into some kind of societal norm, anything like that. Nor should that ultimately be the goal of eating healthier and training, right? Like it doesn't have to be the number one goal. It is generally a side effect, sometimes faster than others for certain individuals. But I think that we just need to have a much more nuanced conversation and saying things like intentional weight loss doesn't work, because I've heard this phrase for years and years and years now, is truly damaging to the people who really need the help. Yeah. And that's where I think a lot of the good intentions have gone awry, unfortunately.
For sure. Yeah, and I understand, obviously we understand where those good intentions come from, but there definitely needs to be like more of a conversation about like who would that really apply to. And the idea of intentional dieting not working, it's just, we know that's not true. We just need to kind of really dissect, hey, what have you been doing and what methods have you tried? And obviously, like if it's something that isn't sustainable, that's not going to be something that you can realistically stick to. But intentional dieting does work. Everyone can intentionally diet. It's just a matter of like what approach you're taking and if it's going to be something that can actually add value into your life.
Absolutely. And I think that we just have to look, if we're going to look at research, we have to look a little bit deeper. We have to not just look at 95% of diets fail or 95% of people regain weight.
Dr. Google or Dr. Oz. Or
like, yes, diets are failing. People are regaining weight. I have literally talked about this ad nauseum for the past 8 years. Why is that? It's because of the methods, and we can't just look and extract numbers that we like. That's like the definition of cherry picking, right? Literally, that's the definition of cherry picking data. And we have to say, okay, this has failed. Why? What are the mechanistic reasons? What are the implementation reasons? How is this even applicable to real life, right? Because they do some crazy shit in studies, y'all. Like some of the stuff that happens in research, people think that it's like science is flawless. It is absolutely not, right?
Definitely not.
So I think that there's this really interesting thing that I see happening. And again, I always just think this is due to social media, but I feel like it is people either look at science and they take it so like literally, or they have a complete distrust in it. Like there's no in between. They're like either like they saw it and they're like, yep, that's true, without looking more into it.
And
or
that's like the really sucky thing. Cause I love when like, hey, if someone's going to cite something, awesome. Right. But the problem with that is that most people don't really understand how to interpret the studies that they're given, or even the people who are citing certain things, they might not even understand fully how to interpret the study that they're using to support their claims. So they might just be like, hey, like this title or this abstract supports what I'm saying, but we don't actually have maybe the skills going on there to really dissect and interpret what the study protocols actually looked like and really like understand like what was going on with this study and why do we have the claims that we do. And most of the population on Instagram, TikTok, like just getting this information, right? Odds are they don't really know how to fully interpret articles either. So
I can barely interpret articles. Like it's very hard.
Yeah.
And even if it's like a bulletproof study that you have a great background in statistics and understanding everything.
There's so many considerations that need to be just even after reading everything and kind of doing all my highlighting, I'm like, there's still like a lot of considerations to be kind of thought about, even if it is like a great study.
Mm-hmm. And that's when we can go, okay, hey, this was cool. This could be something that I implement or something that I understand, but I'm not going to like die on this fucking hill because I read one paper. Yeah. And I think that's the problem is a lot of people get really hung up. This is both in the evidence-based community and just, on TikTok.
On the interwebs.
This is like everybody, right? People either like die on this hill for one paper or they have a complete distrust. And it's like, again, there's nuance. Like there can be studies that you look at and you take some things from and you say, yeah, maybe that would fit the, population that I'm working with, or this would work for me. Let me try it.
Yeah.
right? Like there's very rarely anything that is completely set in stone in science. And I think that people need to understand that more. That's actually one thing I love about Dr. Campbell's research review. Shout out to him. Body by Science. It's such a great tool, I think, for people, because he breaks down a study. As someone who has been doing research and teaching for, I don't even know how many years, a lot of years. He's been doing it for a minute, guys. Just trust me.
He's like, you don't know how many years, Lauren?
I know. I'm like, really? How many years? I got to ask him now. He breaks down a research study from a scientific perspective, and then he gets two experts to weigh in the field, whether they're practitioners, coaches, trainers, whatever it might be.
Stephen did one of those too.
Yeah. I've written a few. They're so great. And so you're getting like the practical in the field, kind of knowledge and experience. And then you're also getting the scientific perspective.
Yeah.
And so I love that breakdown. Like so
you
smart.
get like some sort of application along with it.
Because Dr. Campbell understands that that's the important part of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what everybody who wants to read and cite research, we have to understand. Hey, this is all about how this is going to apply to us, right?
Yeah.
No one study is going to be the end all be all, even if it's like some crazy breakthrough. Like there's still going to be more to it, and things that we can build and considerations, like you said, to like, hey, what was the inclusion and exclusion criteria? Like, is this going to fit?
Like, is this even going to be applicable to like my everyday life, or
was this study done in rats or not? Which again, mice research can be great. I am not knocking animal research. I think that there's a lot that we can't do in humans because of the IRB boards. Yeah. There's a lot that you can't do to animals too. So everybody should also know that it's actually very challenging. Like people back in the day, before all the IRB boards, shit was wild.
Was wild.
For humans too. And then, we had the Nuremberg trials.
And ethics and...
all the human experimentation that happened in the 40s, kind of put a pause on that. So
it was a rough time.
It was a rough time before all that. So thankfully we have
the Wild West.
Some boards now, and also for the animal research as well. But they can do more in animals and faster because animals have a shorter lifespan. So they're able to do more that we couldn't do. Like you can't silence, like it's easier to silence a gene in a rat than it is to do that in a human, right? And you can control their environment. But again, all of those, when you are controlling certain variables, you're getting a more precise outcome. Yay. But now you're also taking away some of the real life application. Boo. So you have to take those things into consideration. Just like when you have a free living diet study, the first question is, well, then can't people eat whatever they want and just lie? Of course.
Yeah.
That's
also a consideration.
That's a consideration that you have to recognize. If someone is free living and doing a study, they can do whatever the fuck they want.
They can lie.
Now, generally speaking, we will throw people out of studies if they haven't
complied.
If they haven't complied
a certain set of standards, or
or if there's like, if they're in a weight loss study and they've gained weight, you're like, okay, and then you look at their diet logs and you're like, oh, they actually weren't following this. Okay, well, we have to pull this, right? Or I remember in my study, somebody started taking creatine. And I'm like, fuck. Like, oh, you tell me that now on like almost the last visit? That's sick. Got to throw you out, right? Like, not like that was going to make him gain 15 pounds of muscle, but it's like that could affect how much water weight you have, which is
an outlier versus everyone else.
Yeah. So ethically, most researchers will do that, but still, there are so many considerations, and that's where I just get frustrated when people will start to use a study to validate their point, which I appreciate, but then they lack any nuance with it.
Yeah.
And again, totally understand these messages, but these blanket statements without any nuance is really, really discouraging to other people. And I think that, again, I will stand on this hill that I think that it can be harmful to the people that it, is trying to help. And I think that there is a lot of room for nuance here and discussion. And ultimately, I feel like we're kind of missing that really with everything, but especially for this particular topic. I feel like
there's a certain level of like policing that goes on with this kind of thought process, going even, excuse me, relating to the like before and after posts, that kind of stuff. There's one post I saw that, literally would say like, if I can even pull it up, but basically they say that even congratulating someone or like liking a before and after post is like harmful, or they even say like, hey, like block me if you're going to post that kind of stuff. So these kind of like this kind of like radical thinking, it just like it's very like, it just puts people off first of all, right? It's very like, there's no like conversation that's even able to happen here with the considerations that we've been talking about this entire episode. So I feel like there's kind of like a wall put up between people who think this kind of way and those who just kind of want to introduce that nuance. At least like from what I've seen. I'm not sure what anyone else's experience is, but there's just like a very like hard line that this kind of community draws where they're like, there's no conversation to be had. This is how it is. Kind of like the black and white thinking where it's, hey, like I'm just going to take this like as is, like this is fact in my brain, when we know when we're looking at research, I'm never going to say like one thing or say something as like definite, because that's always going to change and there's always considerations to be made. So yeah, I think there's something to be said for like not all of the information is always going to be applicable to every single person.
The before and afters is tough. And as a coach, I definitely struggle with this because there are times where you want to share a really dramatic before and after. But then to your point, there are some people who might take that, and that's not up to me or you or the client. It's not up to anybody how they take something, right? I can't protect everybody. But seeing it dramatic before and after, certainly can elicit those feelings of, oh my gosh, that's so far away. It can elicit two feelings. It can elicit, wow, that's so far away from me, I could never get there. Or it could elicit motivation. It could be like, wow, someone else did that. Like, I really resonate with that. So there's both things that could happen, right? I can't control either of those outcomes because that's how the individual person is reacting. But that's not even really what I struggle with. What I struggle with more is sometimes, what if someone does make a really great transformation and they've made some physique progress, but they've made so much other progress that's not just even external,
photos
that nobody can see. And that's really where most of what's happening, because most physique change is pretty slow, right? Like, again, we're talking about sustainable physique change. So when we're working with clients,
and a lot of that too, like, I don't think a lot of people consider like, oh, most of that is going to be mental too. You know, the mental challenge is probably more prevalent than just following the diet and doing the cardio and doing the training.
And all the stuff that you're feeling, like, again, that confidence. And sometimes you can see that, you know, you can see that in people's, like, you know, when they're smiling and just how they like carry themselves and how they even, like, honestly, how even some people type, you know, I can tell when someone's like feeling better. But you can't really see that in a, you know, in a front and after photo, you know, like the check-in photos that we're getting, which are like not usually like the most flattering photos. Like, if we're being honest, they're just kind of, you know, standing there.
It's like, here I am.
So it's sometimes I struggle with that because I'm like, man, I want to showcase this, but then I also like, it doesn't even encapsulate what I'm trying to share. So then I'm like, it's not even worth sharing because it doesn't, not that it's not good, but like, I'm like, I want to show even more than like what all of like this photo is. So that's where I struggle for sure. But I don't think that and again, if someone is only showcasing these super extreme before and afters, that could be a problem. That could be indicative of, is that just the only kind of coaching style they have? Like, are they only focusing on super dramatic weight loss? Because if that's the case, again, I'm cool with it, but what are we doing after? Right? Which is the whole point of this. Oh, diets don't work. No, the after period doesn't work. So if you diet someone down really aggressively, cool. What are we doing afterwards to help support them? Right. And I'd love to see the after, right?
Yeah. After versus after.
Yeah. There's this photo. I used it in a presentation years ago and just found it on my computer. And it was to talk about weight regain. And it was a photo. It was like a stick figure, you know, but it was like with a tummy and it was like before, after, and like the after was bigger than the before because that's what happens with weight cycling and yo-yo dieting, which again is what this, you know, that post that we led with and what a lot of the other posts are talking about. So all of this is very true, but the it's misrepresented in terms of like what that means for everybody, and it's misrepresenting what we can actually change. And what I don't like about those messages is that it takes the power away from the individual to make change. And it basically makes it seem like nothing you're going to do is ever going to work. And that's just not true. Like, no, you have so much power to make changes physically, mentally, emotionally, and nobody can ever take that away from you. Like, you can do that. You're
always in full control of where you go, what you want to do, what you want to achieve. And sorry, dying. When we look at even like kind of circling and, you know, kind of circling back to that main...
Where are we going?
I'm just going to circle down the drain.
Where are we going? Like, where are we going?
Circling back to that main point about, you know, there was that... We did watch a video together, too, about diets just having to be extreme and restrictive. And diets are not going to be easy. You know, dieting... And if you want to change your physique and change your lifestyle, you're going to have challenges. We're not saying it's going to be easy, but it's also not going to be simple. So there is going to be like some resistance you might feel, right? You know, you're not going to be, you know, instantly starving yourself, or like the starvation mode that we've heard about a lot too. You might feel some resistance at first, especially mentally, if we're, you know, building new habits and trying to kind of reinforce some new changes into your day-to-day. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. We just have to figure out how to kind of combat some of those obstacles and work in a way where we're just slowly building up some of these new skills so that you feel more confident performing them. But you can get there. It's not going to be just a simple walk in the park too.
No, and that's...
God, we're both dying today.
And that is where it comes down to the implementation. It comes down to what are the methods that you're using to achieve this. Because if someone is, let's just say, hypothetically, eating a, you know, standard American diet, under eating a few days, overeating a few days, eating a lot of packaged and processed stuff, not really prepping food, all of a sudden they start to get on a diet and they get on a very low calorie diet. Yeah, that's going to be a huge fucking disruption to your body and to your hunger signals. Not a good plan. We would never recommend that, right? Before we even diet someone, we're going to get them consistent with their intake, right? And for some people, that might end up being a little bit of a deficit because of, you know, how it works out. But generally, most people, you know, we're working within kind of that maintenance range. And they're starting to develop those habits. They're feeling a lot better. And then eventually, if we're like, hey, do we want to start to go into a deficit? Now, we already have a handle on all this. It's not like we're just starting out the gate. Hey, you have none of these skills, none of these habits in place. Let's just start this other thing that's so dramatically different. Yes, that is going to set you up to fail. That is going to set you up to be ravenously hungry. Absolutely. And there will be times when people are dieting and they're hungry, and that is just that is the reality of it. Yeah. You know, I've never once been able to diet and not be hungry. Like, it's just, unless there is some like catastrophically stressful situation going on to where like I am just like not hungry because I'm very stressed over something, like emotionally. Outside of that, always hunger. Right. And some people deal with that more than others. I mean, we've worked with some clients just don't feel a ton of hunger. Don't really get hungry. And other people are like, I'm constantly thinking about food. And part of that, of course, is, you know, there's a lot of other
psychology and
a lot of other things, which whole different podcast. But, you know, there are ways to work on that. But yeah, there's the blanket statements. Really, really want them to stop. And that's actually part of why we want to do this like mini series on the podcast, is just to bring up these topics and these videos, and kind of, you know, react to them and not react to them in an inflammatory way, because I feel like all of the reaction stuff is like, one thing is this, and then you're like, well, fuck you, we're going to talk about this way. It's like,
these are definitely things that just need more conversation and like need that nuance and like even more context to like what we can do with like some of these statements. And yeah, like the few that we went over today, they're all kind of like in the same camp, but I think it is something that just, as controversial as it could be, was a good way to kind of kick off this little series.
Yeah, we Lauren and Jill relax.
Lauren and
Jill, that's never going to happen. We're so chill. Lauren and Jill
Lauren and Jill chill.
Yeah,
on the pod.
One day they learn how to relax, and then
we take a 2-year nap.
Yeah, probably not going to happen. But yes, Jill is officially back from her slumber, and
it feels good to be awake again.
Yes, so good to be awake, and is taking on clients of all kinds. So
yeah, I definitely
unicorns welcome.
Unicorns welcome. Haven't gotten one of those yet. Anyway, I have been coaching clients over the past couple of years, of course. I do still work with both contest prep and lifestyle clients, so I'm happily taking on any goals, a variety of goals at the moment for our clients.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm super excited. So all of that information, as you guys know, can either be found in the show description, or you can visit our website, redefinehealthybrands.com. And we will talk to you guys next week. Oh, before I forget, I wanted to say this earlier. I already forgot. If you guys have videos or topics that you want us to react to, there is the anonymous link that is in the show notes, or you can also just send us a topic through our email, go to our website, or you can just send us a message on Instagram.
Instagram works,
if you're like, oh, yo, I saw this crazy video. You guys
share.
You guys need to do this. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.